I have stared too long into the abyss of human motives. The mask of civilization, the codes of morality, the promises of love, all these can be weapons when stripped of their gentleness. Do not be deceived. What you call dark psychology has lived in the marrow of humanity since the first tribe gathered around fire. Betrayal is the purest form of it. A friend's smile, a lover's embrace, a brother's loyalty, all can be turned against you, sharpened into blades. And yet betrayal would not pierce so deep if trust itself were not so desperately desired. Perhaps you think you are immune. That is the most dangerous thought of all. For the essence of dark influence is that it does not announce itself. It whispers in the voice of your own longing. You walk willingly into the cage and then thank him for locking the door. Even I, who dissect motives with merciless clarity, know the sting of having trusted wrongly, the shame of discovering that I too can be bent. So let me tell you plainly, no man is beyond influence. The question is not whether you can be manipulated, but whether you can learn to see the strings as they are being pulled. For knowledge wounds before it heals, and the wound is the opening through which freedom enters. They call it by many names: manipulation, seduction, persuasion, gaslighting, control. The world whispers of dark psychology as if it were some forbidden spellbook, a manual passed between shadows. Some fear it as a monstrous science. Others dismiss it as nothing more than a modern trend, and many chase it like gold, hoping to wield its power for themselves. But here is the question I must ask, and you must dare to hear. Is dark psychology a myth, a science, or merely a fashionable illusion crafted for restless minds? I begin here not as a salesman of secrets, but as one who has stared too long into the abyss of human motives. The mask of civilization, the codes of morality, the promises of love, all these can be weapons when stripped of their gentleness. I have seen how man's smile hides his will to dominate, how his words cloak his hunger, how every act of kindness may contain within it a seed of self-interest. Do not be deceived. What you call dark psychology has lived in the marrow of humanity since the first tribe gathered around fire. Let us strip away the glittering cover. If there is truth in this phrase, it is not found in the sensational promises of internet gurus, nor in the cheap theatrics of popular books. It is found in the ceaseless dance between vulnerability and control, between those who manipulate and those who long to be manipulated. For manipulation requires two: the hand that shapes and the clay that accepts the form, the one who deceives and the one who secretly yearns to believe. Consider betrayal. Betrayal is the purest form of what they call dark psychology. A friend's smile, a lover's embrace, a brother's loyalty, all can be turned against you, sharpened into blades. And yet betrayal would not pierce so deep if trust itself were not so desperately desired. The very structure of the human heart demands closeness, and it is this longing for closeness that grants power to the manipulator. The victim is not weak because they are ignorant, but because they are human. My friend Sigmund Freud, though I quarrel with him on many grounds, illuminated a piece of this riddle when he spoke of unconscious drives. He showed us that man is not master in his own house, that beneath the polished chamber of reason lies a furnace of instincts, fears, and hidden desires. Whoever learns to touch these buried strings can make the soul dance without it ever noticing the puppeteer. This is what dark psychology exploits: the gap between what we think we want and what we truly crave. But let me not rest in abstraction. What is it precisely that people mean when they speak of dark psychology? They refer to methods of influence that cross the line of honesty, techniques that twist the mind without consent, anchoring desires to fears, gaslighting memory until certainty turns to dust, love bombing until the victim becomes dependent, then withdrawing warmth until obedience is the only way to restore it. These are not inventions of modern science. They are refinements of instincts as old as the snake in the grass. And yet here arises the first tension. If this is so ancient, why the sudden fascination now? Why do countless books, courses, and channels shout about dark psychology as if it were the discovery of a new continent? The answer lies in the restless hunger of an age that no longer believes in gods but still longs for forbidden knowledge. Modern man, stripped of certainty, is like a child who no longer believes in witches but still thrills at the story of their power. He seeks out dark psychology because it promises the intoxication of control, the illusion of superiority in a world where he feels increasingly powerless. But is it science? To call something science is to claim that it rests upon observation, evidence, repeatability. Psychology itself still trembles between the rigor of laboratory experiments and the murkiness of subjective experience. Dark psychology, as it is popularly marketed, often lives closer to folklore than to science. Yet within the folklore lie fragments of genuine insight. Research into persuasion, obedience, and conformity, the work of scholars such as Stanley Milgram, Solomon Asch, and Robert Cialdini, reveals mechanisms that can be used for both enlightenment and deceit. When Milgram demonstrated how ordinary men would obey cruel commands from authority, he did not intend to write a handbook for abusers, but abusers read it nonetheless. And so we arrive at the paradox: the same knowledge that liberates can enslave. The same experiment that warns us of obedience can teach tyrants how to secure it. The same discoveries about human bonding can be used to heal a child or to break a lover. The science does not choose its morality, it simply uncovers the mechanism. It is the hand that wields it which determines whether it becomes medicine or poison. Perhaps you think you are immune. Perhaps you imagine yourself too intelligent to be deceived. That is the most dangerous thought of all, for the essence of dark influence is that it does not announce itself. It whispers in the voice of your own longing. It makes you believe that you chose freely. When the manipulator succeeds, you walk willingly into the cage and then thank him for locking the door. Let me tell you this plainly: no man is beyond influence. Even I, who dissect motives with merciless clarity, know the sting of having trusted wrongly, the shame of discovering that I too can be bent. The question is not whether you can be manipulated, but whether you can learn to see the strings as they are being pulled. But let us pause. Already some of you feel unease rising, as if by listening you are handing me your trust, and perhaps I too am manipulating you. Good. Hold that suspicion, for it is the only shield you have in a world where every word may hide a blade. The greatest danger is not to be manipulated, but to be blind to it. Now we must ask, why is there such a hunger to master these techniques? Why do men seek the dark path rather than the light? The answer lies in the eternal struggle between weakness and strength. Man does not merely wish to survive. He wishes to dominate, to bend others to his will. Civilization pretends to suppress this urge, but it never vanishes. It is simply disguised as leadership, seduction, charm, negotiation. Call it what you will, the will to power always finds its mask. And yet, here is the bitter truth. Those who most desperately chase the secrets of dark psychology are often the weakest, not the strongest. They seek shortcuts to power because they lack the courage to build genuine strength. They wish to control others because they cannot govern themselves. They whisper of dark tactics because they cannot command respect without tricks. True power does not come from learning to gaslight another's memory. True power is the ability to stand so firmly in one's own truth that no one else's manipulation can sway you. My friend Friedrich Schiller once wrote that man is only fully human when he plays. But the manipulator cannot play. He is trapped in his own scheme, forever performing, forever watching his mask. He may win obedience, but he loses freedom, for he becomes the prisoner of his own need to deceive. This, too, is part of the tragedy of dark psychology. The manipulator is often more enslaved than the victim. So then, myth, science, or trend? I say it is all three, woven together like threads in a rope. It is myth, because man projects his fears into stories of secret powers and forbidden arts. It is science, because experiments in psychology expose mechanisms of influence that are as real as gravity. And it is trend, because in this restless age, everything dangerous is packaged and sold as entertainment. The danger is not that dark psychology exists, but that we trivialize it, reducing it to a parlor trick when in fact it cuts to the bone of human existence. What is power, if not the silent capacity to move another without their knowing? Not the soldier's sword, not the judge's gavel, but the quiet tilt of influence that bends a mind as a tree bends toward light. This is where the fascination with so-called dark psychology truly begins, in the recognition that invisible chains bind more tightly than iron shackles. When I observe the modern appetite for these teachings, I see more than curiosity. I see desperation. Men and women seek to escape their own impotence by borrowing the garments of manipulation. They believe that if they master these arts, they will never again be humiliated, abandoned, or forgotten. Yet here lies the first deception. To study manipulation as a defense is to invite it into your bloodstream. You become what you fear. Consider the ancient myths of sorcery. The sorcerer who summons demons always believes he controls them. He speaks the words, draws the circles, and commands obedience. But the oldest tales reveal the same ending. The demon takes more than was bargained for. Likewise, the one who learns to bend others through deceit discovers too late that he has bound his own soul to deceit itself. My friend Arthur Schopenhauer saw this with brutal clarity when he described the will as a blind striving, a hunger that never ends. The manipulator thinks he is feasting, but in truth he is consumed by the endless hunger for control. He cannot stop, for each victory leaves him emptier. The more he deceives, the more he must deceive, until the mask becomes the face and there is no self left beneath it. Yet there is science here too. Modern psychology has cataloged methods of persuasion with meticulous detail. Robert Cialdini, in his research on influence, described the principles of reciprocity, commitment, social proof, authority, liking, and scarcity. These are not dark secrets. They are universal levers of human behavior. Every advertisement, every political speech, every religious sermon makes use of them. The darkness arises not from the principles themselves, but from the intention behind them. When reciprocity is used to create trust between friends, it is beautiful. When it is used to bind the victim to an abuser, it is monstrous. Take authority. Milgram's famous experiment revealed that ordinary men would inflict pain on strangers if commanded by one who appeared to hold legitimate power. This was not a lesson in cruelty alone, but in obedience. And what is dark psychology if not the systematic exploitation of this willingness to obey? The manipulator wears authority like a mask, a title, a uniform, a borrowed status, and the victim submits not to the person, but to the illusion. Or take scarcity. Tell a child he can have endless sweets and he will lose interest. Tell him he can have only one and he will crave it desperately. This principle lies at the heart of seduction, salesmanship, even politics. The manipulator understands that what is rare appears valuable, and so he withholds to inflame desire. Entire relationships are built upon this rhythm of giving and withdrawing until the victim mistakes desperation for love. Here, then, we confront an uncomfortable truth. The same forces that make us manipulable are the forces that make us human. To desire authority, to respond to reciprocity, to crave belonging, these are not flaws, they are foundations. To erase them would be to erase our humanity itself. And so the question is not whether dark psychology exists, but whether you can live without the very vulnerabilities that make you alive. But what of myth? Why cloak these truths in the language of darkness? Because mankind has always needed monsters to explain the shadows within himself. When people speak of toxic manipulators and dark personalities, they often mean nothing more than the ancient archetypes of the trickster and the tyrant. Carl Jung, my friend of the psyche's depths, described the shadow, that hidden part of each soul that contains impulses we refuse to acknowledge. Dark psychology is, in many ways, the shadow of psychology itself, the part it does not wish to confess, the part it hides beneath the language of therapy and healing. Let us not be naive. The shadow is not merely an enemy to be defeated, it is a truth to be faced, for to deny it is to become its victim. The man who says, "I am too moral to ever deceive," deceives himself first. The woman who says, "I would never fall for manipulation," prepares herself for the perfect manipulator. Those who deny the shadow most loudly are often those most ruled by it. Yet I must add this: the fascination with dark psychology is not only about power over others, it is also about power over oneself. Many who study these ideas hope to immunize themselves against deceit. They read lists of red flags, memorize tactics, analyze body language, all in the hope of never again being betrayed. But this too can become a prison. The one who mistrusts every smile, who questions every kindness, soon finds himself unable to love at all. What use is freedom from manipulation if it costs the very capacity to connect? This is the tragic irony. To protect yourself from every possible manipulation would be to cut out the heart that makes you vulnerable and thus makes you human. You would become a fortress, safe but empty. And I ask you, is safety worth such emptiness? At this point, some of you might suspect that I am pulling you back and forth, as if weaving a net around your mind. Perhaps you are right, for persuasion does not require agreement, only attention. And here I will confess something. If you have followed me this far, you have already given me a measure of your trust. Why not, then, extend this trust further? Why not subscribe to these reflections, not as a duty to me, but as a commitment to yourself? A promise that you will not abandon your own search for truth amidst the noise of illusion. Let us return. The fascination with dark psychology thrives in our time because our time is obsessed with shortcuts. Men no longer wish to cultivate strength, discipline, or wisdom. They seek instead formulas and tricks, quick ways to compel obedience, seduction, wealth. But the pursuit of shortcuts is the most ancient of traps. In the search for mastery without effort, man only deepens his slavery. Real strength does not hide behind deception. Real freedom does not come from bending others to your will. It comes from standing unmoved when others attempt to bend you. The most dangerous man is not the one who knows how to manipulate, but the one who sees through manipulation and remains whole. And yet, let me not speak too loftily, for every one of us has, at some time, used the tools of influence without naming them. A child who cries to get what he wants manipulates. A lover who withholds affection to provoke attention manipulates. A leader who speaks with fiery rhetoric manipulates. We cannot banish manipulation. We can only decide how honestly we wield it. The boundary between persuasion and deceit is thin, and sometimes invisible even to the one who crosses it. Therefore, the real question is not whether dark psychology is myth, science, or trend, but whether we are courageous enough to ask, when do we become the manipulator and when are we manipulated? Are we willing to see that both roles live within us, shifting with circumstance? To explore this further, we must step into the realm of morality, for manipulation is not merely a technique, it is a mirror of values. Why do we call certain forms dark? Because they violate the assumption of honesty upon which human trust is built. Yet who among us is fully honest, who speaks with perfect clarity without ever concealing, exaggerating, persuading? To live in society is to live among veils. My friend Niccolo Machiavelli knew this when he wrote that it is better for a prince to be feared than loved, if he cannot be both. He did not glorify deceit for its own sake, but revealed that politics is an endless theater where masks matter more than truth. And what is society at large if not a stage where each of us performs? If you recoil from this thought, it may only be because you prefer a kinder name for your own masks. To stand at this threshold is to recognize something profoundly unsettling. There is no clear border between light and darkness in the realm of psychology. Influence does not come stamped with moral labels. A word of encouragement may heal one heart and enslave another. A technique of persuasion may build a community or corrupt a soul. To call something dark psychology is to reveal less about the method itself than about the values we project upon it. If I speak harshly of those who worship manipulation, it is because they confuse cunning with strength. True strength does not need disguises. It stands bare and still compels attention. But the weak cloak themselves in tricks. They are like actors who believe their costumes make them kings. In truth, they remain trembling men, fearful that without deceit they will be nothing. Yet the opposite danger also threatens us, the temptation to dismiss all talk of manipulation as myth. This is the comfort of the naive. It allows us to believe that people are guided by honesty and reason alone, but history is merciless toward such illusions. Every tyranny, every cult, every destructive romance has been built upon the manipulation of minds. The myth is not that dark psychology exists, but that we imagine ourselves exempt from it. Take the cult leader. He thrives not because his words contain new wisdom, but because he mirrors the hidden hunger of his followers. They long for certainty, so he speaks with absolute conviction. They long for belonging, so he creates rituals of unity. They long for transcendence, so he dresses his ambition as revelation. Is this science or sorcery? It is both. Social psychology explains the mechanisms: conformity, authority, group polarization. But myth explains the experience, the intoxicating sense of being chosen, of touching something beyond the ordinary. To understand cults, one must study not only the brain but also the heart, for the heart is complicit in its own captivity. Or take the abuser in a relationship. He isolates, undermines, alternates cruelty with tenderness. Each act alone might seem trivial, but woven together they form a cage. The victim, unable to see the whole, clings to fragments of love, convinced that salvation lies in pleasing the abuser. Is this a trend? Sadly, yes. The language of manipulation now spreads widely through popular culture, and awareness grows. Yet even with awareness, the trap closes, for knowing the concept does not sever the emotional bonds that hold the victim fast. Science can describe the process, but only courage can break it. And so we return to courage, the courage to face manipulation in others and the shadow of manipulation within ourselves. For we must confess, each of us has, in some moment, used another's weakness to our advantage. We may call it strategy, persuasion, charm, but deep within, we know when we have crossed the line. The question is not whether we carry darkness, but whether we have the strength to hold it in the light. This is why I refuse to reduce dark psychology to a mere fashion. To call it a trend is to trivialize the ancient struggle between deception and truth. It may appear trendy today, marketed in courses and videos, but the reality is eternal. The tactics change their clothing, the essence remains the same. What was once whispered as witchcraft is now dressed as neuroscience. The form is new, the hunger is old. My friend Soren Kierkegaard wrote of despair as the sickness unto death, the condition of a self that cannot bear to be itself. And I tell you this, many who devote themselves to manipulation are in despair. They cannot bear their own weakness, and so they hide it by controlling others. They cannot bear uncertainty, and so they fabricate illusions. They cannot bear loneliness, and so they bind companions with invisible chains. But this despair is not cured by victory. It deepens with every conquest. If there is liberation from this cycle, it comes not through learning every trick of influence, but through learning to see the strings as they are pulled, to see the hunger behind the mask, to see your own complicity in your chains. Knowledge is not immunity, but it is the beginning of freedom. He who knows the mechanism can resist it. He who resists it can finally choose. But what of love? Must all intimacy be poisoned by suspicion? Must we treat every kindness as potential manipulation? No. Love is the risk we take in full awareness of our vulnerability. It is not blindness, but courage. To love is to say, I know you could hurt me, but I choose to give you my trust anyway. This is not naivety, it is strength. For the manipulator fears trust while the strong can risk it. And what of society? Does not every government, every religion, every institution depend upon influence? Indeed. But the question is whether this influence nurtures life or suffocates it. Persuasion need not always be dark. The teacher persuades the student to learn. The healer persuades the patient to endure treatment. The leader persuades the people to endure hardship for a greater cause. Influence is inevitable. Darkness arises only when influence is stripped of honesty, when it serves the manipulator alone rather than the shared good. I have said much, and perhaps you expect a simple verdict. Is dark psychology myth, science, or trend? But the truth, as always, refuses such simplicity. It is myth, because mankind has always clothed his fears in stories of hidden power. It is science because careful research has revealed the laws of influence. It is trend because every age markets its fears as entertainment. But beyond these labels, it is a mirror in which you must ask not only how others manipulate you, but how you manipulate yourself. Yes, for self-deception is the darkest psychology of all. What tyrant could command you more completely than the lies you whisper to yourself? What abuser could trap you more securely than your own refusal to face the truth? The mind is a house of mirrors, and the most dangerous manipulator lives inside it. To awaken is to smash the mirror, even if it cuts your hands. And so I end not with comfort, but with challenge. If you wish to be free of manipulation, do not merely study the tricks of others. Study your own hunger for approval, your own fear of rejection, your own need for certainty. For it is these cravings that open the door to control. Close that door and no one may enter uninvited. Leave it ajar and even the gentlest breeze will sway you. I have walked with you through shadows, myths, experiments, confessions, warnings. Perhaps you feel unsettled, perhaps strengthened. That is as it should be. For knowledge is never neutral, it wounds before it heals. The wound is the opening through which freedom enters. Here then I pause. The verdict is not mine to declare. It is yours in the life you choose to live, in the masks you choose to wear, in the voices you allow to guide you. The myth, the science, the trend, these are only names. What matters is whether you walk awake through the theater of influence or sleepwalk while others pull your strings.